You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Welcome to Beyond the Headlines. My name is Joyce Duriga. I'm editor of Chicago Catholic, and this is where we take a look at beyond the headlines on people making the news that we're covering in the Chicago Catholic. And today we have a special guest in our staff writer, Michelle Martin. Thought it would be a good opportunity to let everybody get to know her a little bit more. She writes a column, the family room column in the newspaper, and has done for many, many years, and has been a fixture in the Archdiocese and communications team for longer than I've been here, which is 15 years. So welcome, Michelle.
Good morning. How are you today?
Well, thanks. How's it going?
It's going well. Everything is kind of quiet right now, so that's good.
That's a good thing. So tell me, how did you get started in journalism? We both went to journalism school, and then maybe we can talk about how you transitioned to religious journalism.
Well, I started in high school. I was attending Immaculate Conception High School in Elmhurst, which is in the Diocese of Joliet, relatively small Catholic high school. And I needed to take an elective when I was a sophomore, and journalism was the only elective offered in the English department, which was kind of my strength. And they were restarting the school newspaper. So I took journalism as a sophomore. I think I was one of two sophomores in the class. The rest were juniors and seniors. And I just took to it. I really enjoyed it. By the time I was a junior, I was editing the newspaper. When I was a senior, I was editing the newspaper and the yearbook. I did a summer journalism program at Northwestern University between my junior and senior years of high school, and ended up going to Northwestern to journalism school. And that was kind of it. So I've been practicing journalism in some way since I was about 15 years old.
Yeah, it's so funny. I got into it by accident too. I was looking for something to get out of study hall, and they were putting in applications for 8th grade editors on our junior high newspaper. And I was like, oh, I'll do this. And then it's just went from there. And now you end up editing not just one thing, you end up editing a whole bunch. So how did you went to the Daily Herald first? How did you end up at which was then the New World?
Well, I've been at the Daily Herald for about almost 10 years, not quite 10 years. And as I'm sure you're aware, the journalism industry has been going through a shrinking process for many years now. And the Daily Herald had been on an expansion track up until then. And that was the first time we were really starting to hear about, shrinking the staff, wage freezes, hiring freezes. And it became clear that they wouldn't be expanding so much more. And that was a consideration for me. But also, I lived in Chicago. I've lived on the North Side since we got married. I actually had an apartment on the North Side even before that. And I was working out in the suburbs, and the commute was horrendous. And at that point, my oldest child was about a year and a half old. And on a good day, I would come home and see her like at bath time before bed.
Wow.
So I needed to have a more reasonable schedule. And honestly, I was talking about it with a lady in our parish who happened to know the editor and general manager then of the New World, whose name was Tom Sheridan. And I was telling her that I was kind of looking for a new job. I wanted to stay in journalism, but the commute was so bad. If I left Arlington Heights at 6, I wouldn't get home until 8. And she knew Tom. So she said to me, Michelle, you have to call Tom Sheridan. He's looking for a writer. And she called Tom and said, Tom, you have to talk to Michelle Martin. She's really good. I don't know that she'd ever read a thing that I'd ever written.
That's hysterical.
So I called Tom, and that was it. I did have to take a pretty significant pay cut, to be perfectly honest, to move into the world of Catholic journalism. But I started working much more reasonable hours. And even when the hours were not necessarily more reasonable, the commute was a third of what it had been. So, and I discovered that I really liked it. You know, people ask sometimes, it's like they think it's boring covering
Right.
church stuff, and it's not. Certainly no more boring than covering suburban zoning boards and plan commissions, which is what I had been doing. And when you talk to people about their faith, their faith is important. Everybody I've ever talked to about their faith, whatever faith they are, their faith is important to them. And when people talk about things that are important to them, they're interesting. So yeah, it's certainly not a move I've ever regretted. It's been good.
Now, even the New World has gone under a lot of transition over the time you've been. Can you talk a little bit about that, what you've seen and how it's changed?
When I started at the New World, it was October of 1999. We were housed in the basement of the Mercy Boys home, and the staff then, Tom was editor and general manager. We had an ad manager plus 3 ad reps. We had 3 telemarketers who came in the afternoons to try to sell subscriptions over the phone. We had a full-time assistant or associate editor. We had 2 full-time staff writers, of which I was the second. And then we had Dolores Madliner on staff, who worked part-time and did church clips in around the Archdiocese. We had 2 full-time production people and occasionally temporary workers or contract workers when we needed them. And we published every week, except for in the summer when we went every 2 weeks, and the week between Christmas and New Year's we didn't publish. So there were a lot more people doing a little less than twice as much work as we're doing now.
Yeah.
Now, not counting the other people, but editorially, as you know, we're a staff of 3. And we publish 24 times a year. And the papers are bigger. When we were publishing every week, a 12-page paper was not unheard of. And now we mostly publish 24 pages, very occasionally 20, more occasionally up to 28. So we're doing, a little less than half the work, maybe even more than that, given the increase in pages, and doing it with a much smaller staff.
Yeah, I forgot when I first came here. We were much bigger, and we have gone down in size a lot. But yeah, and the news doesn't change. If anything, I think our role is even more important now, with all the competing voices out there. And we want to talk a little bit about that? What you see as the role of Catholic media in the church?
Well, I think I'd like to draw a distinction between Catholic media in general and diocesan newspapers.
Okay.
In a lot of Catholic media, there's a lot of Catholic media that has a point of view, and the church is not and should not be left or right. And it seems to me that a fair amount of Catholic media does have a position at one end or the other of the spectrum. And diocesan newspapers, our job is to present the news in as unbiased a way as possible, to be the voice of the diocese. And the diocese is the local church, to be the voice of the local church. That doesn't mean that, it's different from working in a secular order. Our point of view is the point of view of the church, but not the church on this end or the church on that end. It should not be really, we shouldn't be getting involved in interchurch fights so much. Now, obviously, in any diocesan paper, the bishop is generally the publisher, and the bishop, if they decide to write, or the cardinal in our case, if they decide to write, can have their point of view and explain it. But we need to say simply, this is what's going on. And often this is what the church teaches,
Right.
but we're talking about what it teaches, not what we think it should teach.
Right. And I know that I agree with you that it's hard for some people to understand, because we do get, emails, or even when you're out, you hear from people who, why don't you do more about this? Why don't you do more about that? And yeah, it's what the church teaches, and why.
Right. And being in Chicago, anything going on in the church, especially anything going on in the U.S. church, will in some way be going on in Chicago. We, as a diocesan church, we kind of run the gamut. So it's kind of
really
hard.
Go ahead.
It's just kind of hard to think of an issue in the church or something going on that we don't see here, whether we're talking about ministering to migrants, whether we're talking about the pro-life movement. It's all happening here. So
that's what really drew me here too, is it's a microcosm of the larger church. I was at one of the national Catholic media outlets, and they wanted to do more of this, where you get to be down on the ground level when the grassroots stuff are going on. And Chicago is pretty unique that way. I think that not only is every issue going on, but there's also every group. You want maybe a more traditional music mass, we have that. If you want something more contemporary, gospel style, we have that. We have all kinds of devotions, we have all kinds of ethnicities, we have all kinds of spiritual, well, I guess devotions is the best way to say it, going on. So it's a great place, I think, to be.
we have all the opportunities and all of the struggles. We have large suburban parishes where the struggle is not to be impersonal. We have small urban parishes that are struggling to keep themselves afloat, and are now having to cope with Renew My Church and unifying and figuring out what that means to be a new parish with the parish next door that maybe we shouldn't have, but maybe we saw as our rival more than as our cooperator up until now.
That's certainly been a growing experience. Okay, we have to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back and talk some more with Michelle Martin and about the Chicago Catholic. Don't go away.
Caring adults make all the difference in the lives of adolescents. Catholic Charities understands this, and our mentorship programs provide a free opportunity for young adults to spend time with volunteers who genuinely care about them. This program is ideal for youth aged 9 through 12 who may need support navigating the challenges of childhood and early adolescence. Our amazing volunteers serve as friends who help youth recognize their strengths and empower them to reach their full potential. Catholic Charities conducts a thorough background check on every volunteer, and our program coordinator closely monitors and supports every relationship. Mentoring is a fun after-school program that can help young adults build confidence and enjoy fun activities with their peers, too. To learn more, visit CatholicCharities.net or call 312-655-7970 in Cook County and 847-782-4224 in Lake County. We're connecting youth with great role models. Join us today.
People always say, how can you spend your day with 3-year-olds? Seeing the changes that they go through and just the journey and how they grow, this is a very rewarding job. Even though at the end of the day, we're not the highest paid people on earth. And when I have a parent contact me and say, my child loves school, that to me, I'm setting that foundation for their love of learning, because really you are changing lives, you are molding lives.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
Do you have an old bicycle that's not being used? Consider donating it to Catholic Charities Veterans Bike Project of Lake County. Skilled volunteers are refurbishing bicycles to make them safe and ready to be used by veterans to get to and from their new places of work. We also gratefully accept financial contributions that are used to purchase bike helmets and other safety accessories. Our veterans have faithfully served the United States, and now it is our privilege to serve them. For more information on the Veterans Bike Project of Lake County, call 847-782-4219. That's 847-782-4219.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines with the Chicago Catholic. Today we're talking to our staff writer, Michelle Martin. Before we get back to talking to Michelle, I just want to plug the newspaper. You can check us out at ChicagoCatholic.com. You can follow us on social media and sign up for our free newsletter that comes out a couple times a week. And keep up to date with what's going on with Cardinal Cupich and Pope Francis. And Michelle mentioned Renew My Church before the break, and everything that's going on and with Renew My Church. It's been a whirlwind couple of years with that. So you can sign up for a subscription. It's $30 for a year. We come out about every 2 weeks, and that helps support our ministry. So check us out, ChicagoCatholic.com. So before we went to break, you mentioned Renew My Church and all that other stuff. What are some of the favorite stories that you've covered over the years? I don't imagine Renew My Church is one of them, because that was painful for a lot of us, but yeah.
One of my very favorite stories was actually one of the very early stories that I did. Way back at the turn of the century, which sounds weird to say, because to me it seems like 1990 was 5 years ago, but there was a large stainless steel statue of Mary that was commissioned for the Archdiocese, Our Lady of the New Millennium. It's in St. John, Indiana right now. But starting in 1999 and into 2000, and through, I think, a few years into the 2000s, it was mounted on the back of a truck, and it would travel to different parishes, Catholic institutions, mostly in the Archdiocese, but not entirely. And towards the end of 1999, one evening, I followed it as it moved. It was moving from the Felician Sisters Convent and Mother House up on the far north side, all the way down to St. Jerome Croatian in Bridgeport. And it took Western Avenue the entire way. It needed a truck route because even it was on a pneumatic lift. So they would lay it down on the flatbed to carry it through the streets, but even laid down it on the truck, it was 14 feet. So it needed viaducts that were at least 14 feet high. And I was there with the people on the north side before it was taken down, prayed the rosary with the sisters, talked to the people who came out. The sisters were out giving rosaries to everybody who didn't have one. Talking to people why they were out. It was winter. It was cold. It was already dark at 6 o'clock. And then, watch the workers as they laid the statue down and secured it. And I followed it all the way down Western Avenue in my car. And I would just watch the people, like on the cross streets, stopped at the stoplights as we went through, staring at the statue. And then I stayed as they put it up at St. Jerome in the parking lot, and the number of people who came out to greet the statue. And then the pastor had a short, I believe it was also a rosary service, and stayed for that and talked to the people there. And it was so much fun to see like two ends of the city and see how people felt about the statue and just the comfort they took from this image of Mary. So that was really fun. I would say that in general, my favorite stories to do are stories that involve going out and talking to people, experiencing something. My favorite stories to do are not the ones that I'm more or less, sitting at a desk talking to people on the phone. Um, just last weekend, story hasn't been printed yet, but I went to the Northwest Side, and Our Lady of the Rosary Church, parish, which includes St. Paschal Church, hosted migrants who are staying at Wright Community College for Mass and dinner. And they'll be doing this every Sunday for the rest of the summer, but it was the first one on Father's Day. So I went to the college and walked with the migrants and with Bishop Birmingham and one of the deacons from Our Lady of the Rosary Parish. And you walked with them to the church. They have a regular 6 p.m. Spanish Mass on Sundays. So they had Mass, and then they had dinner with them in the school gym. And those are the kinds of stories that I like to do, where I can walk with people, in that case, literally, and hear a little bit about what their lives, and talk about kind of what, how the church is present to them and how the church is making the love of God present to them in the moment. So that would be a very early one and a very recent one.
I agree. It's most fun to be out there amongst the people and really kind of engaged in what they're doing and observe. Yeah. Before we did the break, we were talking a little about, the role of Catholic media, and you made the distinction between diocesan and maybe Catholic media in general. We've undergone a lot of changes in diocesan media over the years. What role do you think we play? And I still think it's an important one, and I think you agree.
Well, I think we are important because we do a lot of the, I guess I would say, like paper of record stuff, like, announcing, clergy changes. And, one of the things that I do for Chicago Catholic is put together the obituaries. So all of the obituaries for the priests who have served in the Archdiocese, basically just letting people know, this is something that happened. So this priest who is your pastor has passed away, or, your new pastor is going to be this person. And I think just that is important, but I think it's also our role in bringing the universal church to the local. So yes, we run a lot of stories about Pope Francis and about the Vatican, but it's, about the synod and synodality and what is our diocese doing with that. It's about going to the peripheries and ministering to migrants, and what is our diocese doing about that. And it's also in some ways just, this is what other parishes in the Archdiocese are doing, and maybe you could do something like this too. And another story that I've been working on that's coming up is parishes that have transportation ministries to help people get to and from church, especially elderly people who don't drive anymore but still want to participate in their parish. And so maybe somebody in a parish that doesn't have a transportation ministry will see that and say, we could do this,
right?
And start doing it. I just think that it's, in a very basic way, all of journalism is the sharing of information. I think that over the past 20 to 30 years, all of the journalism world has moved slightly away from just sharing of information to sharing of opinions much more than it used to be. Any cable news channel on whichever side of the spectrum you want to go on has gone to be more opinion than actual fact sharing. And I think that as a diocesan paper, our job is to share the information about what God is doing in our local church. So that's where I see our role. And it saddens me. I know that a lot of diocesan papers have closed. Right. And it saddens me that they're not there as a resource anymore for their people.
I agree. And, we just took a big blow, as you know, earlier this year with, there used to be a national wire service, Catholic news service put out by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. And where we could we could share stories across the country and get media like that. And that closed down. The Vatican portion is still open, but that was a big blow too, I think, to being able to communicate, across the church what's going on in the United States and all of that. So we have just a couple minutes left. Any last thoughts you want to share on how is working at the Chicago Catholic impacted your life, do you think?
I wouldn't say that I was terribly devout before I worked for the Catholic paper. I wouldn't say I'm terribly devout now compared to some of the people I know, although I think I know a lot of people who are very devout given what I do.
Right.
Yeah, I had a Catholic education. I have learned quite a bit about my faith, and it's made me think very seriously about my faith. When I started, one of the things that Thomas Sheridan said to me was, don't let working for the church ruin your faith. And I think sometimes you can, because the church is a very human institution, and you'll see the church and you'll see people in the church do terrible things, and it can be hard sometimes, and sometimes you have to separate the faith from the work. But it's also made me much more aware of my faith and how my faith impacts my daily life. Writing the column, as the kids get older, I try to write less about them. But one of the things that it's made me aware of is how much of the kid's journey becomes the parent's journey. And we always use kind of as a metaphor, the love of God as a father and the love of God as a parent. And it makes me so much more appreciative of the love of God. And, how much, if God is a parent, how much God wants us to be happy, how much God wants us to succeed in doing what we're supposed to do. And it's not about wanting to catch us out being wrong, it's wanting to give us what we need to do what we're supposed to do and to be happy doing that. It's given me an entirely different perspective.
Amen. Well said. All right. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, Michelle. And I hope that everybody's listening or watching this got a little more glimpse into our staff writer, Michelle Martin, who's been here a long time. And again, check us out at ChicagoCatholic.com and follow us on social media and support us with a subscription if you can. And well, until next time, you all have a gentle and joy-filled day. Bye-bye.
Bye.